Now this is quality content. Alright, I'm going to talk about the Thunderbolts. I got to see it on Tuesday and I had some thoughts on it and I wanted to share them with you, the people.
And we give it back to you, the people.
This movie is the movie that everybody's talking about. The movie that has the theme of depression. And why I'm going to talk about that theme later in my video is because I have a problem with the theme. So I will be interspersing, cutting back and forth between me and some clips, but more or less I'm going to be talking about my feelings overall with this movie. So let's go ahead and talk about the Thunderbolts, or AKA the new Avengers, since they already decided to spoil it a week into the freaking showing of the movie. I've never seen that kind of craziness except for Birds of Prey. That is the only other time I've seen that. So this movie is really about Yelena and her growth, dealing with mental illness and depression, and she is sent on an assignment to take out loose threads that is accrued by Elaine from Seinfeld. I know her name is not Elaine from Seinfeld in this movie, but she acts like Elaine from Seinfeld in this movie. We found out Elaine is getting put on trial for her crimes, and she's going through an impeachment process to find out whether or not she should be removed from office. In doing so, she's trying to close up all loose ends, every single loose end, to make sure she's not found out about Project Sentry. Yelena is doing her last job and she goes home to visit her dad and talk to him about feeling fulfilled. More or less, there is comedy between the two, and it is great bit of acting between Yelena and the Red Guardian. Honestly, those are probably the tightest scenes in this movie. We later go to the bunker to find out that they were all been sent there to kill each other to tie up the last loose ends, and so the last of Project Sentry can be wiped out. And during the fight, we find out that we get a strange person in a strange case known as Bob the Sentry. From there, they try to escape the bunker and they try to more or less get out and figure out what's going on. The government is now after the Thunderbolts as they try to escape the desert, and as they leave the desert, they go ahead and meet up with our next character, Bucky Barnes and the Red Guardian. Bucky needs these guys to help them with the impeachment trial so he can have evidence to take down Elaine from Seinfeld. They go back to the city of New York, where the Sentry has already been taken there after leaving the bunker that they were all trapped at, and he is already being prepared to become the Sentry and become the hero that Elaine needs him so she can justify what she's been doing and hopefully not being Pete. After that, we see that Elaine is more or less trying to get this guy to destroy this loose end so she doesn't have to go to jail, but insanity ensues. She tries to get away, her assistant helps her escape, and then we later get into the last act of this movie dealing with the Void. And the Void is engulfing the city as everything is getting taken down, only for the Thunderbolts or the new Avengers to save the day. And eventually, at the very end of the movie, they are now dubbed the new Avengers by Elaine and more or less the heroes of the city. What are the good parts? I love the scenes between Florence Pugh and David Harbour. Honestly, those were probably the strongest scenes. They really were. They were amazing, they were strong, they were well acted, especially in the third act, fall down to climax point, where we see these two characters, they're dealing with all this stuff, and she just lets her heart out. One thing, even though I don't like a lot of the Florence Pugh movies that she's done, one thing I definitely have given her is that she is an actress that knows what she's doing. Another thing I love is no matter how much this writing tries to put my boy down, John Walker rises and becomes notorious. And I just, once again, I think it's because the actor, which is Kurt Russell's son, Wyatt Russell, he's got this charisma. He's got his dad's charisma. He really does. And it's just, It's so endearing, and I'm loving how more and more people are coming to the defense of John Walker and understanding what I have been saying about John Walker's character for years after Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that John Walker really didn't do anything wrong. I did like that they touched on the themes of depression and mental health, which is great. I do think that they did what they could, but at the same time, that is kind of what my problem is with this movie later down the road, which I will mention later down the road with the negatives. And that will also be the spoiler part of my video, so keep up that, ladies and gentlemen. Lewis Pullman as the Sentry / Bob / the Void, I liked as well. As another case of, you have Bill Pullman's son in this, and it's so good to see him leave beyond Top Gun Maverick. I believe he was also in, and he did a really good job. I really did enjoy him in that movie as well. One of the things that I would definitely say, if anything, is that even though this movie is marked, I think, close to 2 hours, it actually doesn't feel like 2 hours. It really doesn't. I was really worried about that, and especially a lot of the movie dealing in the bunker, because a lot of the movie is in the bunker. Like, no joke, your good first to middle of the second act is in that bunker. And I was really kind of like, wow. And I looked down on my phone and was like, we're already zipping through. Finally, I did enjoy the music. I actually enjoyed the music. I actually enjoyed what they were trying to do with the music. You could tell that, especially once they became the new Avengers, it's this almost this new rendition of the Avengers theme, but not really at the same time. And I really did enjoy that as well. I guess that's about it. Now, here's where it comes to the negative parts, and I want to be very clear about this. If you enjoyed this movie, I'm glad for you. I really am. But there were some problems with this movie that really need to be addressed. For a movie that, once again, the theme is mental health and depression, it's baby's first mental health and depression session. And what I mean by that is that it's the same issue I had with Steven Universe. If anybody doesn't know, Steven Universe was a show that dealt with different subjects from LGBT to mental health. And for a show that wanted to talk about these issues, it only talked about the surface level of these issues, the surface level of what these certain issues were. And the same thing happened with this movie, I felt as well. One of the biggest problems I had with the Thunderbolts was that thematically it didn't know what it wanted to be. It still acted like it wanted to be a Marvel movie with mental health, and it just didn't work. This was to be the one time where I would actually had to let it be just a somber, dark film. Talk about these issues. Be real with these issues. Don't play around with it. It's the same problem I had with in Iron Man 3. Iron Man 3, I had that same issue too, is that we talked about anxiety and PTSD, and they kind of go over it, and then he just magically is better like that. And it's the same thing here. It's that they know that at the very end of the movie that they can't really beat the Void, so what happens is they give him a hug, because the Void is a mental state of mind. What the Void is, it shows you your past. It shows you your past mistakes, the things that you regret the most. And at the very end, it shows that Elena and the crew go in there to more or less help him, not by beating the depression, but by telling him he's not alone. Which that can have problems in itself, because at one point, yes, I do agree you shouldn't have to deal with mental health by yourself, especially when it comes to major bouts of depression and stuff like that. The unfortunate truth and reality is that you do have to deal with that alone, and sometimes you have to learn how to deal with it without burying it and trying to not really talk about it and deal with it. And which they kind of touched upon, but they didn't really go full hawk with it. It just kind of was like, okay, he's fighting the depression, he's fighting the Void, but oh no, he's losing because the shadow of the Void is taking him over. And it just felt like they were just like trying to be like, this movie's about depression without us really talking about depression. And especially when it came to certain aspects where, spoiler, Taskmaster dies in the beginning of this movie. Like, literally in the beginning with the vault, she gets blasted, and that's it. She's gone. She's done. And after she dies, it's kind of like, once again, she dies, and instead of being like, Yelena taking this moment and realizing life is meaningless, she's this death that from this woman who was more or less blown up by her sister Natasha, tortured, made to become a child soldier, forced to become a child soldier, and then later has her chance for redemption and only to be shot in the face and then turned into a joke is my exact problem with this movie. It totally did not know when not to be a joke and when to be a joke. And that's the thing. When it comes down to it, Yelena should have had this moment of like, wow, life really is meaningless. She got shot in the head and none of them care. And instead of being like, wow, yeah, she had a hard life and everything, she could have looked back and said, this person that didn't even get a chance to live her life is now gone. And she doesn't even get a chance to flourish. And it's kind of like that through the entire movie. They'll hit a moment of like real dark gravity and then boom, joke. And it's like, no, you should leave it on that moment of gravity and just leave it. No joke, no nothing. Leave it. And they kept just jumping back and forth and didn't know thematically what they were doing. It was whiplash because they kept wanting to just be Marvel with its humor. Another problem with this movie is that a lot of these characters are reset to zero. And the reason why I think they're reset to zero is because if you didn't watch anything leading up to this movie, you're more or less kind of like, who is this not Captain America? Who is this new chick? Where's Black Widow? Where's all these other characters? You didn't know who these characters were. And especially with Ghost, they didn't really flesh her character out at all. And especially at the very end when everybody was going inside the Void. The Void is like this area where you, once again, you relive your past traumatic problems. And they definitely did that with Yelena. They were showing her character. But Ghost, nothing at all. We didn't see Ghost, we didn't see the Red Guardian, we didn't see Bucky. And I know a lot of people can say, well, Bucky we've already seen and what he's went through. But it would have been really more interesting to kind of dig a little deeper and see what else he's got going for him. And they didn't really explore that thing, and that's what really kind of bothered me about this. It wanted to be the mental health movie, which once again, that's why a lot of people are giving this movie an A. It's because it is the mental health movie. And I agree with that completely. But just having themes of mental health and depression does not equal good movie. Nostalgia Critic once said something along the lines of, just because it's a dark themed movie or just because it has dark themes doesn't equal dark. It doesn't make the movie dark. That's something that a lot of people don't seem to understand. It just because it has dark themes doesn't mean the movie is going to be dark. And just because this movie has mental health issues, it doesn't mean that the movie is all of a sudden this piece about mental health issues. It's very much, like I said, it scrapes the surface. There's a lot more to talk about mental health. There's a lot more than the iceberg that they're trying to, the very tip of the iceberg that they're trying to talk about. There's so much more down there than they're presenting. This is also what I want to mention, that this is a movie that keeps trying to make certain characters likable and certain characters the bad guy. They try to make Ghost this likable character, but if we remember from Ant-Man and the Wasp, she fucked up. And like I was mentioning with, like, I kept saying Elaine from Seinfeld, that's how her character really is. It's just this is why I keep saying that it feels like tonal whiplash, because they keep popping back and forth between jokes and being serious and jokes and being serious. Whereas I would say Guardians 3 and even Guardians 2, I would say most of the Guardians movies or the original Captain America trilogy actually hit that good, like, not humor balance perfectly. It kept sucking me out, especially with certain parts and where I would think they would have taken that a little more seriously, and then the parts that aren't as serious they took way serious, and it was like, okay, I don't think this is very solid. Another thing they try their best, and this is why I say this is a negative. They really try their best to paint John in a negative light. They try to paint John Walker in this negative light, trying to make him look like he's this bad guy. In real reality, he really isn't this bad guy. He's this character that's gone through a lot himself, but yet they keep trying to paint this character over and over and over and over into this. He's this slimy bad guy. He's this awful character. And in the end, he's the one that's most of the times right, but the movie never acknowledges that. The movie tries its best to make you want to hate the character, especially when Bucky tries to tear him down as well. You know, it's especially with Bucky, because Bucky has been in this universe the longest, and he should know the best. Another big thing I was so flabbergasted with is how people acted like, oh my gosh, superheroes. And it's like, you guys have been in this universe, like at the beginning with the Congress, the Congress hearing, and the congressman goes, so of all these super people or persons, and I'm like, you're a congressman at this point, so you've obviously seen the Battle of New York, you've been part of the blip, you live in an area where you've seen probably the helicarriers go down, because that's in Washington. You've seen all this stuff, and you're acting like superheroes is a shock to you. Like, you can tell that this movie was trying to answer questions, but once again, they knew that a lot of people didn't see the previous Marvel stuff, so they had to reset a lot of these characters' motivations to zero and try to build them up from there. And if you had seen the other properties beforehand, it's a kind of a treat for you, but you could still tell that they reset these characters, had a soft reboot for some of these characters, and it did bug me. It bugged me as much as, like I said, the depression and the mental health thing. Mental health is so much more than just the big sad and bubbling yourself ideations. You know, even though there were some scenes that I thought was very powerful, like the dad between Yelena and Red Guardian near the end, and then the scene where John Walker is looking down the elevator shaft after he has his vision with his flashback. There are certain elements that I definitely do 100% say they were great and they were greatly acted, but that's not enough to deal with certain topics, especially when it comes to depression. Depression, like I mentioned before, is more than just the big sad. It's more than just some of the stuff, like same with anxiety. Anxiety is not just, I have an anxiety attack, I'm breathing heavy, oh my god. Anxiety leads to anger. It can lead to bouts of doing crazy stuff. It's way more branched out than just the word anxiety. And that's the same thing how I felt about this. It's like, okay, you know, they beat the Void by giving him a hug, but by making him stop and saying that they'll always be there for him, which it looks like they kept true to their word 14 months later. But that's not helpful to everybody. Everybody deals with their mental issues or addictions or problems differently, and that's how you should have addressed the movie, but they really didn't. I mentioned Elaine. Basically, she just acts like Elaine, which was really disappointing, because I was really hoping that they were actually going to do something with her character and make her like 5 steps ahead of the game, and she really wasn't. It always seemed like she was almost caught off guard every time. Like every time something was coming up, she almost seemed like, oh, I didn't know that. And it was crazy to see that, because this character is a very integral part to the Marvel Universe. And they just kind of played her like she was this, she kind of played her like she was an idiot sometimes, and it was really frustrating. And this is another case of like, if you want to complain about people not liking how you write female characters, you should kind of look at how you write female characters in the Marvel Universe. Like, Maria Hill plays a big part in Secret Invasion, the comic book, but she gets killed off in the show. Look at Lady Sif. Just was just a giant joke on the Thor: Love and Thunder. Black Widow. I don't even know what that was. But yeah, she really was disappointed of that. Really was sad about a lot of the choices they made with this. I would have really loved to explore more about Ghost or more about Red Guardian's story. I know what they were trying to go, and he's basically telling her that, you know, that she always wants to keep the team together and yada yada yada. But the problem with that statement, because Red Guardian makes this statement about how they played for a team called the West something Thunderbolts, and that's how they get the thing Thunderbolts, not like how it is in the comics. Because she used to play goalie because she wanted to be the one that defends people and defends all this stuff, and she always has this light to bring people together. I would have no issues with that if she wasn't freaking wrong a good chunk of this movie. Every decision she made to be a leader, she failed. It was John Walker or it was somebody else on the team that was saving her butt or saving somebody else's butt at the end of the day. John especially was a character that was saving a lot of people's butt. He saved Bucky's, even though Bucky kept giving him crap, and I just that really bugs me, because it was just like, really you're gonna do that? Okay, cool, all right, cool. I see how you play. But saying like Yelena made a plan, her plan failed, but John's initial plan was correct. They kept trying to prop her up to be the leader, but she wasn't a leader in the movie. She really wasn't. And if you want to say, well, she's the glue that keeps the team together, I disagree with that as well, because she really wasn't the glue that kept the team together. In fact, in the closing act for the second act, she goes on this angry tirade, calls everybody else out on their BS. She's like, I hate myself, but I hate you. You're this, and you lost your family, and you this, and you never called me dad. And it was like, a great example of this is when Egan is basically going off on all the group members of the team, but at the same time, he's willing to admit his failure. He's willing to admit that he had some wrongdoing in this as well. This is not explained or explored with the blow up between Yelena and the Thunderbolts. In fact, there is a lot of blame being shifted to others and no blame being shifted to herself. I think it would have made the scene a lot more powerful if they would have done something along the lines of how depression makes people be avoidant of others. So in a way where instead of blaming the Red Guardian for not calling her, maybe he did and she avoided his call, or something along that line, making the scene way more stronger. But doing so, putting the blame on others, is actually a victim mentality, and it actually hurts the scene in its whole. And then at the very end, he's like, you're the glue that keeps the team together. And then at the very end, she says something to help, and it was like, oh, cool. She kind of helped, but she's not the leader. She's just not. As much as you wanted to try to prop her up to be the leader, she failed. A majority of this movie, she failed. I don't know. A theme is not enough to make a good movie. I keep stating that. A theme is not enough to make a good movie. Spider-Man 3's theme is about forgiveness, but that doesn't mean Spider-Man 3 is a good movie. It's not bad to me, and I've mentioned this in a video before, but it's not enough to make it a good movie. Having a theme is not enough to save a movie. And the theme of mental health and everything, I think, is great. I'm glad we're having an open dialogue about that, but I think a lot of people are taking that and excusing a lot of the other bad parts of this movie because it has a theme of mental health, and I think that's kind of stupid, especially since they go through all that, right? And then Bob doesn't even remember what happened. So you went through this whole character arc and don't even remember what happened. It's like, what was the point of that? What was the point of that journey? Why did we go through that journey if the character that is especially is supposed to be the key focus, when being Bob, the Century, the Void, he just forgets about that. Maybe he gets filled in on that 14 months later, which they do show later, which I'm going to explain that at the very end of this. But why did we go through that journey? What was the purpose of that journey? Why do we have to go through all of that? And that's what really bothered me about this movie. It just feels like you want to talk about all this stuff, but yet you don't want to talk about this stuff. Like the death of Taskmaster. That should have been something that struck a chord with Yelena. It's the same thing I was talking about with Captain Falcon in Falcon 4. Basically the same thing that happened to his buddy Riley, his friend, the new Falcon, went through the same thing. So you would think that would be something that would trigger his PTSD or trigger something. Nothing at all. All he's worried about is he wish he took the super soldier serum and he gets a pep talk and then he's good. And it's like, that's not enough. And it's the same thing with Yelena and Red Guardian. Their scene is beautiful, made me cry, not even gonna lie. But that doesn't excuse the rest of the movie, and especially with how they write Bucky. Once again, Bucky's been around the longest, and you'd think he would know a thing or two about a lot of the things that has happened to the Earth, especially with the near-ending world, the cataclysmic things. And yet, we don't deal with any of that. We don't deal with any of those things in the Void. In fact, he's for some strange reason more standoffish. Oh, and this is another big thing. These are the two big things that pissed me off in this movie. So they made this big deal that the reason why Bucky couldn't be Captain America is because he's done bad things in his past. They've kind of made it in interviews and things like that the reason why Bucky could not be Captain America is because he's done all this stuff and he's got to work on himself, blah, blah, blah. Yet the man who killed JFK can be Congress. It's the same problem I had with Daredevil Born Again. I'm not doing a review for that, but it's the same little problem I had with Daredevil Born Again. You're telling me he can't be Captain America, but he can be a congressman? Okay, doesn't make sense. Sure, why not? And then the same thing with the very end, with the spoiler at the very end, you see them now called the New Avengers because Elaine decided to try to save her skin because she was about to get caught after the failed project with the Sentry and everything, and so she calls them the New Avengers, and Sam Wilson at the very end is suing them because they're copywriting on the Avengers. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding you. This and Bucky, supposedly his best friend now, is like, he wouldn't even hear me out. And I'm like, I hate Sam Wilson as Captain America. I really do. I really do. This movie tonally has no tone. It's up and down, and yes, themes of depression and things like that, I've said so many times before in this video, is great. But just like the problem with Steven Universe and why people complained about Steven Universe was because, yeah, you can have a theme of depression, but a theme of depression is not enough for us to be like this, for us to accept what the characters are going through. Everybody deals with mental health different. That's just the truth of it. Some people deal with it with meds, some people deal with it with other ways of dealing with it. But I think it's kind of dumb to me that they beat the big bad with a hug. It just is, because a hug can help, but I don't know. I personally didn't think that was well handled at all, because your direction with this movie was just tonally all over the place. And that's the biggest problem with the Thunderbolts / New Avengers movie. It doesn't know what it wants to be tonally wise. still acts like it wants to be a Marvel movie, but it wants to be something more. You can tell how it's shot, how it's choreographed, how it's the music, everything. You can tell that they were trying to go almost like the Elementals. Not the Elementals. The Eternals. The Eternals, they were trying to go like that kind of Eternals vibe. Try to take it a little more serious. And I could tell that they were trying, and I think this would have worked more with these guys than the Eternals, because these guys, we at least had an understanding of what these characters were before the movie compared to the Eternals, and I think it could have worked better. I really did. I think the message of group and family and fighting depression as a team and everything could have worked way better as that if they had decided to choose to go down that route. But they didn't do that. They chose to, I don't know. I think this movie has a lot of problems. But would I see it again? Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I would see it again. I would see it again. I really would. But does this mean Marvel is back? Fuck no. This does not mean Marvel is back, guys. Like I did my little sketch at the beginning of this video, the bar is on the ground. Okay, the bar is on the ground. That doesn't mean it all of a sudden because they did a movie that has some themes about mental health, it means the movie is now like it's a good movie. No, it's still, Marvel's got some work to do, and I'm afraid because they only have 1.5 movies left until Doomsday. I think it's Fantastic Four, and that's it, and then it's Doomsday. So I have no idea how they're supposed to get this done, because they're supposed to start filming, but apparently there's been rumor has that filming hasn't even started, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a mess. This is gonna be a mess. But I didn't really want to do like a scripted video for this, because I don't know. This was just a mess. So in the end, I give it a 7.5 out of 10. That was my final rating, and I still stand by that. John Walker is once again the best character in this movie. Fight me, John Walker did nothing wrong. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you later. Peace.